fall can be sort of a letdown for the summer gardener because the tomatoes are gone, the peppers are gone, and you don't have anything left to do out in the garden. But if you've got some fall vegetables, you still have a lot of activity going on out there. Now, traditionally we think of squash, we think of pumpkins as fall produce, but there are also some others out there. If you planted parsnips earlier this summer, then this is about the time we begin to harvest parsnips. Once we have a hard frost, the starch in the parsnip will turn to sugar. Now you look for the parsnips that are pale in color. They look very much like a carrot does, except they have a very broad shoulder and they narrow down to almost nothing. The thing that we look for on parsnips before harvest is to make sure that you've had a good frost, at least one, because they're high in starch, and after the frost, the parsnip starch begins to turn to sugar and the parsnip becomes very sweet. Now at this point you can either peel them ahead of time or cook them first and peel them. What we're going to do with them today is something a little bit less usual because most of the time they're fairly fibrous, particularly as they begin to mature and get fairly large. But if you can find some smaller ones, less than 8 inches long, then they're good for shredding and eating raw, and that's what we're going to do today. Now what I have for you also is another fall vegetable, another kind of produce that you may have grown or that you can get a hold of. This is a jicama. The jicama is also a root vegetable. It's a big globe, and what I've done is peel this one. You want to make sure that you peel it before you begin to cut the matchsticks out of it. Now the matchsticks are easy. They look like they're tedious to do, but it's really fairly simple. Just slice a fairly thin piece off after you've peeled it, and then simply you can stack several up at one time. Just go down the row and slice them into little matchstick pieces. Again, it's fairly easy. If you're a fancy chef, you may be able to do this really quickly with a bigger knife, but even if you're not well skilled in knife use, you can do this without a lot of trouble. All right, we're going to start with some either low-fat or fat-free or light sour cream. We have about 1/3 cup of that here. And to that, I'm going to add the juice from about half a lemon, or about 1½ tablespoons of lemon juice. I have about a tablespoon of onion that I've chopped up really finely, and a tablespoon of fresh parsley. Now, if you don't have all of these things fresh, you can always substitute dried, or you can substitute minced onion that you've rehydrated. We'll stir these together. I'm going to use a whisk because I think it'll go a little bit quicker here. And when you get those well blended, you stir in 3 parsnips that have been shredded. Blend those together a little bit. This is going to marinate in the refrigerator. Now, as I said, parsnips are not high in the vitamins that carrots are high in, the vitamin A precursor or beta-carotene. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have nutritional advantages. They are a high fiber vegetable, and so we know that those people who consume diets that are high in fiber are apt to reduce their incidence of diverticulosis, which is some outpouching of the intestinal wall, so that those can become inflamed and cause a great deal of pain. These we stir together and blend them well, and then these are going to sit in the refrigerator for about 2 hours to help marinate their texture. Now the jicama is an interesting fall vegetable because it stays crispy even if you've cooked it. It's similar to a water chestnut in texture, so that's going to keep us some crunch, even though some of the other things in this may tend to cause the parsnips to soften up a little bit. All right, we have this one has already been marinating for a while. To this we're going to add an apple. This is a red delicious. I like red because it adds a little bit more color to the dish. And then about 1/3 cup of golden raisins. These are going to get blended together. Now, one of the things we've talked about this year as we've worked on the program is the fact that many foods are functional foods, and we've seen some that are high in a particular nutrient and others that are high in another that have some particular function as far as helping fight long-term diseases and help the body as you grow older in particular. None of the vegetables and fruits in this one are like that. They don't have any one particular thing, but this does not mean they're not functional. As I said, these are high in fiber. We know that that helps fight diverticulosis. We also know that the higher amounts of vegetables that you consume, the more folate you're going to consume. And folate is going to help reduce levels of homocysteine, and that is high levels of homocysteine those with high levels are at greater risk for heart disease. So while there may not be one particular thing in a food, all produce is functional in one regard or another. All right, we'll serve this in a way that we can see if we can bring out some of the red color as well as the creamy white color of the vegetables that we have involved here, and then we're going to stick on a little bit of green to make it look even a little bit more prettier. As I said, this is a fall dish that I think you'll find a little bit of interest in because it's not the traditional way that we cook parsnips. This retains more of its sweetness, and anytime you can cook so that you get more sweetness in the dish, you're going to find that children as well as adults are going to find it a little bit more entertaining. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.